Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be painting up Aberrants as a practice buffer before I hit Motorian. Now I've already assembled these beforehand like a long time ago at a painting party where none of us painted, we just built like a few models. I was able to do 5 when one person did 1 and one person did 1.5. So good for me. But anyway, so I already have done a video on Aberrants, but there were 10 of them painted in one go, and they have a certain color. But when I was choosing that color, there was another GW like official color scheme thing, and I really liked it. They had teal for their alien bits and like had white skin, and some purple in between their muscles and stuff. So I was like, you know what? I like that. I'm gonna try that. And so I'm going to go pretty hard for line troops right now and paint these up pretty well. And these are all the paints and stuff I used for this, including the basing material, and for some small things that you don't see that I do off camera, which is just like the sign that one of them is holding. Now I'm going to prime these models with Mechanicus Standard Gray. In the end, this was the color that was irrelevant. I could have just used my regular black, and it would have been the same effect in the end. And then moving on to the bases. Now I want to try to do the bases at the very beginning because that's when I'm the most fresh, most excited for the model, and gonna have the most like intelligence and will to do a good base, essentially. So we're knocking that out first. And with AK Dark Earth, AK Puddles, Karak Stone to color the puddles, and I actually do not use those rocks ever. I always think I will need them, but in the end I don't. So first off, what we're going to do is we're just going to apply the Dark Earth all over the bases. We're going to apply a somewhat thick layer and let it just be rough, random, all over the place. And one thing I do off camera that I don't show here is that I basically nuke them with a hairdryer on heat to rapidly dry the top layer. Then I take the individual models and then I place them onto the bases, and so that it can get a basic footprint of theirs. Alright? And once that's done, I basically leave it overnight. So basically they dry overnight from the primer, and the bases themselves dry overnight so that they are solid. Only the top layer is dried because of a hair dryer, but it can still be punctured and it's still bouncy and stuff like that. So now, the next day, I apply Adrax Earthshade, which I forgot to mention. This will apply more shadow and make the base look wet and dark once it's done. And then once that's done, I'm going to use the AK Puddles. Basically, you just pour a little bit of this clear plastic stuff, and then I take a very small amount of the Karak Stone and mix it with it, and it makes it like a muddy looking puddle. And then I place the model that's appropriate to that exact base back on there, so I can see what indents are their footprints and what is not, and so I just fill in lightly. So I start very light. It depends. Some bases have a thicker puddle, some have very small ones, and where I basically fill in just a little bit of these tiny little puddles, very barely noticeable, and drag the brush over so it looks like it's wet, like transitioning between one puddle to another. This is more of an artsy thing, going back and forth. Do it however you like. And then once that's done, this stuff dries pretty quickly, especially with a hairdryer. I then go back with some dark earth and a brush and just like dry brush it on the top areas. The idea is the top part of the mud is dry and bottom part is wet and they're puddles. Yeah. So that was the idea going in. Alright, on to painting. First thing I do, I paint the entire models with Pallid Witch Flesh. That's it. Now I will say this ends up being redundant, as I could have lightly mixed this with a flesh color, because I then basically had to turn these into a fleshy, colory white. So this base layer was not needed. Alright, with Cadian Flesh Tone, Daemonite Hide, Pallid Witch Flesh, and I don't actually use a Lamian medium in the end. I go mostly water. We're going to paint the skin, the main part of the skin, the white skin. Basically their chests, legs, heads, that kind of stuff. So here's basically what we're going to do. So I'm going to take Cadian Flesh Tone and water it down a bit. I tried a little bit of Lamian medium the first time, but eventually I just switched to pure water when I have to remake the color again for the rest of the models. Essentially, I give it 2 thin coats all over the models to give them a flesh color at their base. I don't let it pool because I don't want it in the recesses. I just want to turn it to a shade of this. So I could have skipped the previous step if I would have mixed a bit of this with the Pallid Witch Flesh and just painted it directly on. I could have saved a bunch of time and gone straight to this step, so some redundancy here looking back. And once I did 2 coats because that's like how dense it was. You might be able to do it with 1. But once that was done, I then went back with Pallid Witch Flesh and I highlighted like a good majority of the model. I'm not fully sure what I was doing at the time, so I was just painting essentially. But this base layer right here, using these sable brushes, I am able to create like some feathering, which creates like striations in the muscles or gives a texture to the model. And for their bare flesh, their pasty flesh, it looks pretty decent. And once that was done, I then went with Daemonette Hide. I watered it down into a wash, a slightly stronger wash, and then I applied it all over, I directly put it into areas. So I basically flooded certain areas, their faces, the places between their abs and stuff like that, such and such. And then I went over and did a thin wash of Daemonette Hide again, but very thin, like barely noticeable, but it'll tinge the white that we did all over the model, give it a nice coloring. And then I re-highlighted again with Pallid Witch Flesh, blending things in, focusing on the highlights in the more major areas. And this was a slow process. As far as redundancy goes, I don't know if I could have done it. Well, I could have done it many different ways, but this way builds up more like the individual muscle fibers and makes it look a bit more flesh-like and stuff. So basically highlighting with Pallid Witch Flesh twice. I mean, I probably could have, maybe. It depends. I can't think of a better way of doing this way, even though it may seem a bit redundant how I did it. I think doing essentially highlighting it twice built up some layers and color transitions. I mean, if you're able to do it. Basically, when I highlighted with Pallid Witch Flesh, I focused on painting a straight line on the most raised areas and then feathering it out down. And that created these nice little color transitions and stuff. Alright, once again finding out that my greens and blues are very anemic in my collection. I don't have teal. I realized that a little late. So I made do. Thunderhawk blue, Cabalite green, Pallid Witch Flesh. We're going to paint their arms. So here's basically what's going to happen. So Thunderhawk blue as a base. Essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it, I'm going to water it down a bit until it's translucent. I'm not using Lamian medium for this. And then because the body is just pure white, it shows all the details and muscles right away. And you could probably call this done if you're just like not too interested in painting. Pallid Witch Flesh base, Thunderhawk blue watered down until it's this translucent. But it basically gives a guiding line to all the details of the muscles, and then we can move forward with that. Then we create another wash by combining Cabalite green and Thunderhawk blue. I can't remember the ratio. I don't remember if it was 2 parts green to 1 part blue or equal parts. I can't recall. But essentially applied it on and it made it look teal and had a depth of shadow in it, so looking good. Then I went back with Thunderhawk blue and a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh mixed in. Now we're going straight into highlights, and we're basically highlighting the sharp edges, the flat planes and stuff, as well as the big shoulder parts. What we're going to do is basically we're going to feather it in from the base of the shoulder going up towards the top area. That way, like, it drags a bit so it looks lighter towards the top. It's just a painting technique. Wherever you lift the brush off from will have the most paint. We then repeat this process several times by adding more Pallid Witch Flesh into the Thunderhawk blue and highlighting again, but thinner and more concentrated areas and more obvious edges, lines, and stuff like that, and doing a little bit of extra painting onto the top of their shoulders to create a light point. And we repeat this again and again, like I believe around 3 times-ish, and then eventually we get to pure Pallid Witch Flesh. And it's just very thin light highlights on the most raised sharp edges. And then once that was done, I then made another wash of Thunderhawk blue and Cabalite green, a much thinner wash than before, and applied it all over the stuff we painted to tie the colors back together, to make sure the Pallid Witch Flesh was not too light and bright. and so help make the blends a bit more seamless. And one other thing, so if some of the washes spilled over to the surrounding areas and stuff, the ankles was the most egregious part, because the way their model was, it like trapped a lot of the wash, so it was like hard lines of greenish. You can just redo the pallid witch flesh and just feather in a blend, and it'll look nice. It'll get rid of the harsh lines and stuff. And with Xerxes Purple, Emperor's Children, and Pallid Witch Flesh, I paint the pink stuff that's between their ribs and things. Apologies, somehow I did not get footage of this, so I only have footage of the first step of me filling him in with Xerxes Purple. But basically all I did was, after that, I did not use Pallid Witch Flesh. I took Emperor's Children, and then I took a very fine detail brush, and I just did little taps into their thing and built a line out of that, a line of taps, and that's how I painted their arm stuff. The stuff on the guy's back was the only one I used a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh, but basically I just edge highlighted this stuff because it was very easy to do. There's one guy with huge spines of this, so sorry I missed the footage, but basically a very fine brush and just the high contrast of a dark purple next to the pink is what makes it visible. That's all, sorry. Now with Adrax Earthshade, Ungor Flesh, Cadian Flesh Tone, Gulliman Flesh, we're going to paint their mouths and tongues and teeth. So first with Adrax Earthshade, a small amount of it in each of their mouths to add the shadow. And then once that's dried, with Ungor Flesh, I paint their teeth. It's a yellowish, and the reason why I didn't paint white teeth is because their skin is white and it would just blend in. So this helps it show up. Then once that's done, I take Cadian Flesh Tone and apply it all over their tongues. Then I take Gulliman Flesh and apply it all over their tongues. Then I re-highlight with Cadian Flesh Tone. And then I see that it's just not distinct enough, so I try something. A 1-to-1 of Ungor and Cadian. I then highlight the center and edges of the tongues and feather it a little bit. And then once that's done, I see that it's not distinct enough, so I take Ungor Flesh Pure and highlight like the most raised, sharp edges of their tongues and the tips of their tongues, and it's decent. Alright, and now with Eshin Grey, Dawnstone, and Nuln Oil, we're going to do something a bit different. I normally would do this with Eshin Grey as the wash, but I wanted to try with Nuln Oil just to see like how it would work, if I can still use these well. And also with Administrative Grey, because it wasn't bright enough in the end. So basically here's what we're going to do. I already skipped this step on camera. They're all their pants is Dawnstone. And one of them, the champion, essentially, has some boots, and so that's basically going to be the same color scheme. Then we're going to take pure Eshin Grey and put it directly into the holes, the bends, the folds, the shadows. We're going to create the shadows here. And then we're going to apply a wash of pure Nuln Oil all over. And then once that's done, we're going to take Dawnstone, and I'm going to try something different. So it's something I've done more recently, but I'm going to take one of my special dry brushes, like Artist Opus ones, and I'm basically going to tap the Dawnstone onto it, and it creates this nice textured look. I'm going to apply this all over. And then once that's done, I'm going to apply another layer of Nuln Oil. And then I'm going to go tap again, Dawnstone all over, and it creates this nice textured cloth look. Focusing more on the raised areas and flat areas now. And then once that's done, I'll take pure Dawnstone with a brush and highlight all the edges of the pants, the major folds and stuff like that. And then once that's done, I realized it wasn't bright enough, the highlights, so then I went with Administrative Grey and highlighted the leg pants and the most raised areas of the folds. Now don't forget that their pants and stuff sort of is above their belt, so pay attention to that as well, otherwise you'll forget it. It can be ugly if you forget it. Alright, with Mephiston Red, Corn Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, and Trollslayer Orange, we're going to paint their loincloths and things. Yeah, you know what these are. but I'm only going to show you the guy who has the big one. So we're actually going to use the dry brushes again to paint this. It seems to be a very fast way to do this, and it has pretty decent quality. So what we're going to do is mid-tone, Mephiston red all over. Then I'm going to take corn red pure and put it directly a good-sized streaks inside the recesses, including the little holes here and there. Then I'm going to take corn red and turn it into a wash and apply it all over. One wash usually should be enough, unless you dilute it too much, in which case you'd have to use 2, but yeah. Then once that's done, I'm going to take Mephiston red and with the dry brush, tap, tap, tap it all over. And not really trying, but like not being too scared of the recesses, because of this particular model, the one I'm showing you, it can't reach in there. And then once it's done, I go to Evil Sunz Scarlet and basically do the same thing again. I basically did like 80 to 90% of the entire cape or cloak with Mephiston red, and Evil Sunz Scarlet I'm basically going to do like 80% of what I just did before. And then with Troll Slayer Orange I'm going to do like around 50% of what I did before, focusing on the most raised areas, the upper areas, and the edges of these folds. And then once that's done, I'm going to take pure Troll Slayer Orange and with a brush and just do a thin line on the most sharpened folds or the folds of their cloak and stuff, just to create like some line border to help straighten out the colors, essentially. And that's it. And this was really fast. This was a very fast method using the dry brushes. Now that all that stuff is done, I can paint this without any worries. The armor plates that they have, Dawnstone, Nuln Oil, and Administrative Grade. Basically Dawnstone all over. Then Nuln Oil, filling it in. Then re-highlight the edges and stuff with Dawnstone. If I can edge highlight or with the edge of my brush the center of their armor plates, that's fine. But if you screw up, you can just put Nuln Oil back in there. And then Administrative Gray as a final edge highlight on the most raised edges, corners of the plates. And then trying to experiment more and trying something I haven't done in a while, I'm going to do the traditional way of painting, like a leather belt and stuff, or somewhat traditional idea. Rhinox Hide, Mournfang Brown, XV88 in that order. Rhinox Hide all over, highlight with Mournfang Brown, and then do a fine highlight with XV88. The normal ways I would have done it would have been much better, but I'm sort of trying to find out like if doing the fast way is the actual best way to get the best results, and or like the cheap way, like dry brushing and washes and stuff. And they were not. In the end, the colors were all over the place. It was very hard to find the exact folds. And so in the end, I just hit him with a little wash of Adrax Earthshade to fix it. I probably would have, what I would have done is probably done, probably XV88 pure, and then highlight or fill in the center with Mournfang Brown, and then do a wash of Rhinox Hide at the very end, because that would have been easier to do, more accurate, and would have ended up with a better result. Now with Abaddon Black, Dawnstone, and Administrative Grey. Since I've been going pretty hard on a lot of things, I just decided to go a little hard on this. It's the nails. So Abaddon Black base, Dawnstone highlight on the top edge and side edges of stuff. With the toenails, it's just the front half. And Administrative Grey, like halfway in the middle of the lines I create with Dawnstone and on the tip of the nails. If you mess anything up, just go back with Abaddon Black to shorten things up. I was a bit running out of steam, so I kind of didn't do the best I could have with this, but it's so-so. Yeah, you can fix up anything with Abaddon Black, but also in the end I made a mistake when I was doing this. I should have done this step a bit later. So you paint the weapons that they're holding first, or at least a base layer of that, because you can easily screw up what you just did in this step if you go to paint your weapons. Alright, with AK Interactive Ultra Magic Varnish and Anti-Shine Matte Varnish from Army Paints, which is a glossy color, don't listen to its name, we're going to seal in the non-metals. So basically what we're going to do is first we're going to take one part AK and one part of the Army Painter, mix them together, and one part water. So these what are these seals? Essentially are coated with a color, and they're going to whiten it. So a bit of water actually takes that away. And when they're combined, the matte varnish and this creates a interesting, somewhat wet but dry looking flesh color. It's something I like by combining these two. And basically I apply it all over. And then once that's done, I go back with a ultra matte varnish with a little bit of water to get rid of the whitening effect, and then apply it on the cloth. And that's it. With Iron Warriors, Nuln Oil, Duraluminum from Vallejo, Fire Slayer Flesh, and Rise of Rust, we're going to paint their weapons. Now, I did beforehand paint them Doom Bull Brown on a previous thing, like behind the scenes, when I was painting their fingernails, so I wouldn't mess up. But once I realized I could mess them up and undo everything I did, because I thought it would be like a base color for Rust, it wouldn't really work too well. So basically with Iron Warriors, I basically like dry brushed it, but with a wet brush to create a bunch of scratches and stuff all over. It kind of worked. And I applied Nuln Oil all over. It kind of worked. Then I did the same thing again with Duraluminum all over, and that I basically made like a brown metal pipe with a bunch of scratches. That's what the handles and weapons look like, but it wasn't good enough. Then I applied a layer of Fire Slayer Flesh basically all over to the handles and stuff to add some more character and flavor to them. Oh, just FYI, the heads of the hammers had 2 layers of Nuln Oil to blacken them. And then once that was done, I went back with Duraluminum and added a few more scratches here and there, and then added Rise of Rust. A little bit here and there. I think I overdid it with the Rise of Rust on some areas. Overall, once again, metals are not my thing. I don't know what I could do to make it a bit better. Maybe it's because it's at the very end of my painting journey. Like, my mind is done. I'm done with this model. I'm like, I have no more imagination left. I spent it all at the beginning with the skin. And so I'm running on fumes, and I just can't envision what a good what it should look like, a good idea of it. And I'll try to figure it out another time. Alright, last step, something I haven't done in a while, a pigment powder. With this natural umber, I'm going to take it and just rub it into the bottom of their feet, the bases of their cloth, for those that are that low down. Basically, they're standing in mud. How do they have perfectly clean feet on mud? They shouldn't. And that's pretty much it. And then I just assemble the models. And done. Now there's a few details I did not speak on. Detail number 1, the main guy, the sergeant, what I assume's weapon, I just covered it in the mud texture that I have for their bases. Looks decent. The sign is just 3 colors, like XV88 for the sign, black all over on the details on the sign, the black and edges, some metal shavings on it from Duraluminum and stuff to add cuts into it, I forgot that, and then watered down Fire Slayer Flesh all over to add just some decay or stuff to it, or rust kind of colored with it. But apart from that, overall, their bases look great. 10 out of 10 for the 3 materials I used, or 4 materials, yeah. Looks great. They look absolutely great. Let's ignore the hammers. So they're so bit by bit. First, their white skin looks great. You can see the musculature. You can see like if they're flexing. In the last video I did of Aberrants, I called them Gold Era bodybuilders, and yeah, they do have that appearance. And so the sable brushes I used was able to really get a certain effect and texture look to them. It looks like you can see their muscular strands, or their striations, or basically they look shredded where they need to be shredded. And the white skin looks great. The subtle color palette of the purple and the Demon Head hide and Cadian flesh tone, you can see it there. The Pallid Witch flesh really looks good with its blending and stuff. The hands look good, the skin looks good, the faces look good. The teal arms, the teal parts, the alien parts of them looks great, especially on the arms. The shoulder parts look really, really good. Surprisingly good. Very detailed. You can see all their musculature, you can see their veins, you can see all the details there. Incredible work. And the cloaks and stuff they had was done very quickly, and it looks really good. Really decent work. For basic line troopers, even though these are elites, so they're not 5-point scrubs, they look very good. They're above average. The only thing is their hammers do look a bit like all over the place. It's like the hammers are not bad, but compared to the rest of them, they seem to be a, how do I describe this? Disorganized mess. It's like something seems a bit off with them. Like they're just randomly done instead of like a distinct pattern or design with them. And so basically they're just rusty hammers. That's pretty much it. But they look competent. So I would say the weakest part of them is their hammers, their weapons. Now, as far as things I didn't include when I showed up, the guy's weapon and their faces. So when I went back, essentially all I did was use a darker purple as a wash directly into their eyes, let it add, basically to add more depth and shadow to there, and then basically I just painted their eyes pallid witch flesh, and then just with a micro pen put an iris on there. That's it. But I've never been able to show that in any video because of how close I have to get to it with my face, and I can't record it. I can't put a camera there. Yeah. Overall, these models look really, really good. They are way above basic tabletop standard. They took a while. I would say like 25 to 30 hours of work at most, and like a night for things to dry and stuff like that. One of the guys is holding a skull. I didn't even bother painting it because it picked up colors naturally from the Cadian flesh tone and pallid witch flesh skin section, so it looked good like that. So I was like, alright, no need to change anything. And yeah, overall these look really good. They're not 10 out of 10 because they're hammers, but they could have been for their kind of class. Not scrub troops, not centerpieces, but for the upper scale elite troops, these are easily a 9 out of 10. These are some of the best guys I've painted, and man, did they take a while. Overall, great job. They look great. They're not going to be a centerpiece, but they're going to be the only guys with this color scheme in my army. This squad of 5, which will probably be in a group of 10, so I'll pair them up with someone else. Well, yeah, and I didn't bother painting their bases any specific color coding because the models themselves are going to be the only ones that look like this. So, I mean, yeah, they'll have their own distinctions. There's no need to color code the bases. And that's it. Alright, so like the video if you like the video, comment if you want to comment, and more to come. Mortorian is next. Bye.